But I'll tell you, what I am going to do is just do, I think, an analysis of why we are here, how we got here, and maybe what we can do to move forward. Because if I'm honest, this feels a lot deja vu-y to me. I don't know if that feels like it to anybody else, but it does to me. And I think one of the most troubling things, and I think probably I'm as susceptible to it as anybody, was just reading through the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments. And the reaction of people, y'all know what FAFO is by now, right? Everybody knows what that is. Used to be sort of this kind of championed by Hedgeth, Pete Hedgeth, when he was peacocking around in front of all of our generals and telling them they were fat. Remember that? And it became sort of this mantra for our military. It means F around and find out, right? So it's basically what a 16-year-old bully would tell somebody on the playground, right? When you're getting ready to fight somebody, you might say, without using profanity, you ready to jump? I'm ready to jump, My brother used to say, you ready to go to jail? I'm ready to go to jail. F around and find out. This became the mantra. Now, I know a lot of cops, and I know that they would be they would personally object to that, because that goes against every bit of training that law enforcement, at least that I know, has. They're taught to de-escalate. They're going to always give people opportunity to do the right thing. But it was really disturbing to me that the language of bullies now became the protocol in a lot of people's minds for law enforcement. That troubled me extraordinarily, and it should trouble you. And that what used to apply to two guys that maybe had too much to drink in a bar and getting ready to go outside and go after it, now is being applied to a 37-year-old mother and wife. I'm an old-fashioned guy. I am. I will never be okay with that. Never. No matter how we parse this all out, I'm not okay with that. That is something that should fill all of us with grief and a great deal of pain. So the callousness of just what I observed made me sorrowful, made me angry, made me all kinds of things, irrational. And people ask me, Jim, you can speak very eloquently, you can write. Use your words to build a bridge, to bring peace. And I don't have them. I don't have them. How do I convince somebody, or vice versa, if you believe about our nation that we are descending into authoritarianism? Let's say you believe that. Now, authoritarianism is where you don't question authority. You F around and find out. That's authoritarianism. Let's say, and by the way, I don't know if you know this about me. My family are Kentucky hillbillies. My first instinct is always to question authority. It's my default. It's so embedded into my DNA. It's my first response. So I struggle with the idea that you just don't ever question. But how do I, if somebody, let's say two people are in a room and one person is convinced that our country is descending into authoritarianism, but the other person is 100% convinced that we're stepping into the golden age of law and order. What words do you say? If you have them, give them to me. I'd love to hear them, because I don't have them. So I'm not gonna even say what I think or because my opinions are just opinions. Everybody's got them. But I want to take a look at a story in the Bible that I was going to preach on today. See if we can understand it a little bit from a biblical perspective, because what we do when we study the Bible is we look at the context of what's happening. We extract from that context a principle, which then we apply to our own context, which means it can be a little bit of a challenging thing, and it takes a little bit of time, but that's why the Bible is so important in understanding what it means. So I'm looking at the prophet Elijah, and I'm reflecting for the last 3 days. I just didn't really do much of anything, just kind of reflected and thought and prayed and looking at the prophet Elisha. Now, Elisha came about 900 years before Jesus. So here we have the Mediterranean, as I've done so many times. The nation of Israel is divided right about at this time. The nation of Israel divided right after the reign of Solomon. Solomon's son, Rehoboam, could not hold it all together. So there's a northern kingdom, which is called Israel. And there's a southern kingdom, which is called Judah. Judah was a little bit better than Israel. They had better kings, and they lasted longer. So about 586, around 700-something BC is when Israel fell. At the time of Elisha, his ministry went about 40 or 50 years, so that's a long time. He went through 4 kings in Israel, 4, and he went through 3 kings in Judah. Imagine that. 7 kings that he dealt with all throughout his sort of career. Not only that, there was Egypt down here. Now, Egypt was kind of doing its own thing, and there wasn't a lot that's happening with Egypt down in the south, but every now and then there would be skirmishes. He had Edom down here, which was Edom was actually more up here. He had the Arameans way up here, or Syria. He had other tribal areas from the Negev out over here. So we had all of these, there was actually 4 surrounding nations. He knew every king, every pharaoh, every single person, and they went through multiple leaders, all in 40 years. Sometimes the kings of Judah would make alliances, would break an alliance with, say, Edom, and say, hey, break your alliance with Israel, and together we're going to go fight Israel. Okay, that happened. Sometimes the kings of Israel would get together, and then they would go fight one of their enemies. Sometimes they would get invaded by Egypt. There was a time, and then they had to both come down and fight with some of these other armies, all in 40 years. And through it all, the Philistines were over here. They're the people of the ocean, so they kind of had a place by the ocean. There were 4 kings mentioned with Aram. Aram was the most powerful of all of these nations. Easy to remember, Ben-Hadad. There was Ben-Hadad 1, Ben-Hadad 2, a guy in the middle, and then Ben-Hadad 3. Now, it meant son of Hadad, but it was really more like, what we would call pharaohs. So all of this is going on, and there's all of this intrigue. There's a lack of unity. There's deception. You're breaking treaties, a lot of power mongering, a lot of dissent, a lot of fear. The list goes on and on and on. And I thought to myself, that sounds kind of familiar to me, right? A lot going on, way more than probably your average Judean would able to sit down and wrap their brain around. So, with all of that, I'm just going to do an analysis. I'm not going to project any of my opinion on anything, okay? It's not my opinion. It's just an analysis of why I believe we are here and what we can do about it. Because if you don't understand why we're here, we can't do anything about anything, can we? Our political climate is an extraordinarily divisive one, correct? And I don't think that presidents create a culture. I think presidents or our political leaders, they capitalize on one. There's one that's brimming, kind of just underneath the surface. There's something brewing. They kind of put their finger on it. They get all of they say the right things. They measure it, what's working, what's kind of hitting the nerve, and then that's what our leaders do. So our current president, Trump, put his finger on something. Put his finger on some unrest that a lot of Americans are feeling. Division. Now, a lot of times we don't even know it's there until somebody starts kind of pointing out that it's there, but it was there. Now, if you ever read Art of the Deal, it's an old book. Anybody read that? Some of us old guys, maybe way back then. If you read Art of the Deal, you probably have a pretty good idea what he's doing, but everything is now divided into two categories. All people are divided into two categories. And you've all heard him do this. So, high IQ, low IQ. Probably all heard that one a lot, right? In other words, smart or dumb. Effective, ineffective. Strong, weak. Beautiful, ugly. Patriotic, not patriotic. Okay, so everything is divided down the middle. So now when there's an election cycle or there's something that happens and this ideology gets sort of, I guess, rewarded, people like that and they elect it, then this language enters into our vernacular. Whether we think it or not, whether we are sitting down and cogently thinking that I divide. I don't think, at least nobody in this room, I don't think that I know would put everybody in that category. Stupid, smart, stupid, high IQ, low IQ, patriotic, unpatriotic. I don't think it would do that. But it creates kind of a culture, and it creates a polarity that happens, kind of really at both ends of this spectrum, where we've approved, as a culture, we've approved language that divides us. We have. So it enters into whatever because if somebody calls me low IQ, well, then I'm going to probably call that person something worse, probably, right? So it enters into the politics, whether we give the concession or not. So the question then becomes, for us as a culture, as a society, what's our threshold for this? How much of it are we comfortable with? I'll say a word that wasn't offensive in the 80s, but now is rubbed people the wrong way and wouldn't say it. The word retard. Have you noticed how it's back into our vernacular again? It's approved. Why do you think that is? It's because somebody used it. Nobody called them out on it. So language begins to creep. Language matters. Words matter. I remember several months after Bill Clinton's was in office, he was doing an interview on what did he learn the most about being president that surprised you. He said it was the power of words. The power of words to impact people that heard them, and then how they would be used. So words are important, particularly when they're spoken by important people. Now, your threshold might be okay. You might be perfectly okay with it. You might go, we used to use that word all the time. It's no big deal. Who cares? All right, well, it's not my place to say whether it's right or it's wrong, but we have, words matter. So we've allowed, as a culture, division. I don't think that the president created it. I think he manipulated it, and he took it to a whole nother level that I have never seen in my adult life. So, is that fair? I don't think I've said anything. I don't think I said anything that anybody didn't know about, right? Is that all right? Not saying it's good, not saying it's bad, just saying it is a big factor. Because how can two Christian people see the same event of a Christian law enforcement person killing a Christian lady, and then get judged by, or not judged in the judging, but in just like their evaluation, come to conclusion like nearly 100% down partisan lines, right? By Christians. Everybody's a Christian here. Our vice president's Christian. Kristi Noem's Christian. I don't think our president has made any real, he's Christianish, all right? But then there's a lot of other people that are definitely have, practiced their faith in a significant way. How can we, and then millions of Christians that are looking at this and drawing one conclusion, and millions of Christians looking at the same thing and drawing the exact opposite conclusion. We can't all be right? Are we reading different Bibles? Is Jesus different? Is Jesus ineffective? Is the language and the message of Jesus so obscure that we can't understand it? I guess that's for every person to decide for themselves. So we have division. And I'm kind of like Paul, where I'm saying, I don't really have much concern for people outside the church. I'm talking about in the church. And right now I'm kind of speaking a little bit more broadly, but specifically to this little congregation and called Emerge. So this division, and what's an acceptable threshold for us? I remember, this seems like a lifetime ago, during the Obama-McCain election cycle, which was in 2008, which was when we planted Crosspoint. How many? Some of you all were around there. Remember that? That we had we were a larger congregation, and I told people, I said, and people were kind of getting, and compared to nowadays, it was nothing back then. I said, listen, here's the thing. The way that we vote, everybody votes for all the marbles. So you have something that you want, that you think that there should be something. If it's a Christian, maybe it's abortion. It's you want to have that addressed. You want to have, you don't want to have socialism. You don't want to have whatever, the host of things, gun control. You have your things that you want, and then on the other side, you may have other things, environment, housing, healthcare, whatever, those things. So we all have, as voters, we have things that we want. And yet, when I talk to people, they say, well, what we really want is peace. So what we really want is peace. And I ask them, well, did you vote for it? And of course, the answer is no. I voted for the person that was going to get me all the marbles. And I went, well, maybe next time you should vote for somebody who is known for working across the aisles in a bipartisan way. You're not going to get everything. Because if you get everything, you'll get it for a little while. All right, we got everything. We got all the marbles until the next election cycle. And they will swing and swing and swing and swing and get bigger and bigger and bigger until we're probably already past the point of no return. Because people who are bipartisan don't get, because Christian people who say they want peace don't really want it. They've got these things that they want. So until Christian people say, yeah, that guy's going to get me everything that he wants, but he's a jerk and he's divisive, so I'm not going to vote for him. Until we start saying that, then we're just stuck with what we're stuck with. Can't put it any more plainly than that. At some point, you got to give something up. Second thing is, is a little bit more challenging because some people see things in one perspective and some people see it in another perspective. But I've talked to a lot of people. I've got a lot of friends on every different part of the aisle. And I don't know what would best describe this last year. I think for me, the word just like chaotic comes to mind. Every single week there's a new initiative. There's a new war. There's a new battle. There's a new action. There's a new thing. There's a new tariff. Somebody's getting tariffs. Somebody's not getting tariffs. We're making billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, but nobody's seeing it anywhere. I don't know where it's going. Whatever happened to Gaza, by the way? It's supposed to be like a golf course by now, right? And have all kinds of, what happened to that? What's going to happen in Venezuela? It's supposed to be like, they're going to experience all kinds of levels. Dude's a bad dude. We all know Maduro's a bad dude. I don't have any problem with that. I think we all can agree with that. But what's going to happen with it? You know, what is happening is there's a chain of events that's probably going to make Cuba fall and probably Colombia, and there's going to be some big problems that's going to happen there. And even though there's bad people running these places, there's still millions and millions and millions of humans that are going to be suffering at an unprecedented level. And I'm sure there was a plan, but none of us knew what it was. I'm sure there's a plan now, but we still don't know what it is. What's going to happen with Greenland? I don't know. It's a new thing every day. Are they going to buy it? They're going to give everybody $100,000. Or they're going to go to war for it. Or they're going to buy it from Denmark. Or who knows? But in the midst of all, let's redecorate the White House. That sounds fun. Let's put a bunch of gold stuff on it. That'll make everybody happy. Or let's tear down a little bit of it, and then let's build this great big ballroom, by the way, might be a really great idea. I don't know. Maybe it's a fantastic idea. I'm kind of reading, I'm going, yeah, it seemed like it was kind of a small ballroom. Maybe we needed to put one in there. But maybe there should have been some discussion on it first. And maybe there was discussion, and I just all of a sudden I just go, oh, okay, I guess we're getting a new ballroom. The Kennedy Center. All right, everybody gets canned, and now all of a sudden there's another name on it, maybe I'm feeling alone in this. Maybe I'm feeling alone, but I just go, my God, what's happening tomorrow? And what's next? Now, some people might go, it's brilliant, and it's just a very aggressive agenda, okay? But I think that it's an intentional, I think it's chaos designed to keep people off balance. So we don't quite know what's next. Our eyes are diverted from what the main things are. And it's probably a brilliant political move. And maybe it's very effective, I don't know. But what I know is that families, organizations, churches, countries cannot function in constant chaos. They just can't. It's why there's described as sort of like cultural, societal PTSD. We just go, my God, I can't take one more change, one more headline, one more something that never ends, that's never resolved. It's just all of a sudden you're looking around and going, hey, well, I thought we were going to do this with this, whatever happened with that, and it never happened. And maybe it will, maybe it won't, I don't know. And again, this is just some of my analysis. And I'm not saying it's good or it's bad. I'm just saying I just think it exists. I think that's what a lot of us feel. The third thing, and maybe this is the most important, is the lack of information. I can ask anybody, and sometimes it feels like Pontius Pilate when Jesus says, I'm the truth. And he goes, what is truth? What is truth? Who's telling the truth? Where does it exist? Where do you find truth? Where do I find truth? Joe Rogan? Is that the best we have? Who's the dude got his jaw busted up? Jake Paul? I've never been so happy to see somebody get his jaw broken. I'll say something controversial. There is truth in the media. You just have to find it. How many of y'all remember the fairness doctrine? Some of us old guys. Fairness doctrine put in place in the 40s. And what the fairness doctrine said was that there had to be equal representation of politically divisive opinions. Now, Ronald Reagan got rid of it. And I don't think we can blame Ronnie on. There's no way he could have conceived what was coming. But what that did was it started the 24-hour news cycle, because now people didn't have to verify the truth; they could just say whatever they wanted to say. It was us to determine what the truth was. So we have, in my opinion, we're in a really vulnerable place, because I don't think anybody could say this is definitively where I get truth. Increasingly, what it's becoming for a lot of people in America, it's coming from one voice and whatever that approved outlet is. That's where truth comes. And I know this is an extreme example, but I actually was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, he says, well, you can't trust the media. Media is totally corrupt, fake news. I go, all of it? He goes, yes, every bit of it. Can't trust any of it. Every single outlet never says anything that's true ever. Nope, never. And I said, where do you get your truth? What for you is truth? He says, whatever Trump says. I don't think anybody here, I think we're all pretty like-minded people, but that's just very, very dangerous, extraordinarily dangerous. And there's a lot of people that think exactly that way. It comes from one person and whatever that approved message is, and if that approved message is off, well, then all of a sudden that's fake news, right? It just gets kind of put on and put off. And again, if you read the book, which I would encourage you to read, it's very 1980s-ish. I think The Wolf of Wall Street was inspired by it. It's filled with, Trump is a storyteller, so it's filled with stories. And they're good stories. It's been a long time since I read it, but it's sort of it's a swashbuckling adventure through his experiences, and hardly any of it's true, but it still makes a good story. So we've gotten to a place where I don't think anybody trusts anything from the media. And we've all kind of just gone, I don't know. What did you hear about? I don't know. Do you think that's? I don't know. Don't care. Have to work too long on it. I'll see what Theo Vaughn has to say about it. Disinformation. which I'm just going to call deception. Now, that happens from both sides, every single side. I have a few little outlets that I'm starting to trust more and more, people that I've followed for a lot of years, and I have things that I try to find out. But now this, by the way, could be fixed. We could fix this. There's about, I don't know, 5 or 6, really there's about 10, but really primarily 5 or 6 multi-billionaires that control all of the information. And you could put in, again, some kind of regulation that required there to be, equal representation. You could fix it. And in fact, I'm drawing a blank. Phil, what's the Chan ran for president? Andrew Yang. I always think of my professor, Frank Chan. Andrew Yang. I don't know if you guys remember Andrew Yang. He ran for president. He ran as a Democrat, which I actually, for the first time, I registered as a Democrat so that I could go around here. Caucusing is, you guys all caucus? It's infinitely fascinating, but you have to join the party if you're going to actually caucus. So I switched political affiliations so I could go caucus with and hear what he had to say. And it was me and like 20 other neckbeards because he was not gaining a lot of traction. But he had this idea, universal income. I don't know if you guys remember that. Everybody's like, he's a socialist. Yeah, he's a socialist. But then he explained it. He said, listen, here's what happens. If you're an Alaskan, everybody gets a royalty off the oil. Everybody gets it because they all own it. They all own it. So every Alaskan, for the entirety of their life, gets universal income. They get paid for what they own. And his argument was this. There are now this is what 10 this was 10 years ago. He says there are people who are making billions of dollars, and it's plummeting out of control. And if it were if they were taxed and had to pay a royalty to every person in America because it's your property. They're stealing your property, your intellectual property. They're leveraging it and monetizing it and making billions. Everybody goes, you're a socialistic freak. Sounds like a pretty damn good idea right now, doesn't it? We would not have what we have if that had been implemented. It can be fixed. But it would take our billionaire president, who also has become a master of manipulating and using people's information for his own benefit, to talk to all of his other billionaire buddies who are also making billions and billions of dollars off of the information that they steal from other people. So the likelihood of that happening seems pretty small. But it could happen. It would take an extraordinary act of humility and people intentionally giving away billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars and an unimaginable amount of power. And the last time I looked, people don't generally do that. But it could be fixed. All right. Now, we probably have other challenges. But this, in my opinion, is why we are here. We're divided in almost every area, and that division is being manipulated at the very highest levels of leadership. We are in, I think, constant chaos. There's always one more thing until people's brains just shut down. They just go, I can't take any more of anything. And then there is an absolute girth of disinformation. I'll do this first. Let's go back to our friend Elisha. Ben-Hadad II was dying, this guy. And so he sends for Elisha, who goes up to Damascus, which is the capital there. And he sees Ben-Hadad's servant, Hazael. And Hazael, he says, ask him if I'm going to live or I'm going to die. Elisha goes to him and sees him. And tells the servant, your master is going to live. But it has also been revealed to me that he's going to die. And then he looks at the servant, Hazael, for so long, he just stares at him, that the man gets embarrassed. And then Elisha begins to weep. And the man says, why are you weeping? He says, here's what's going to happen. Your king is going to live, but you're going to kill him. Then you're going to become king. And I know what you're going to do to my people. You're going to burn our cities. You're going to kill our young men. You're going to take the heads of our little ones and dash them on rocks. You're going to cut open the bellies of our pregnant mothers. And then he left. And that's exactly what happened. Jim, what words are you going to say? What's your message? How do we bring this all together? I don't know. I don't know. I think there's a lot of pain coming. I do. So, what do we do from here? This is Paul's words to Ephesians, and you all know them. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take stand against this devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Now, we just talked about what I just kind of walked us through. There are things that are happening you and I know nothing about and will never know anything about. It's so far beyond what's happening in tech, with AI, with information, with data, with billionaires. More and more, it's so far beyond anything. What are we going to do? The answer is nothing. You and I can't do anything. Because my struggle is not with flesh and blood. My struggle is not with that person that disagrees with me politically, because they're just doing the same thing I'm doing. They're trying to make sense of something that will never make sense to them and they'll never understand. Like I never will. They're trying to figure something out in this world that has just gotten so far away from us that they go, well, I see it this way. And you go, well, I see it that way. And we're all like, well, we both can't be right, can we? So it's probably the most unsatisfying message that you've probably ever heard in your life. But that is the reality. So we can get out, we can vote. We can do something extraordinarily unhuman-like, and we can vote for peacemakers, even though maybe we're not going to get all the marbles. I don't think that's going to happen. Whatever you're afraid of politically, it's coming. Like you're afraid of socialism, it's coming. It's just a matter of time. We're already socialists. Just a matter to what degree we're comfortable. We're already socialists. It's just how comfortable with it are we? Racism, it's coming. It's been given voice. There's already sort of this uncomfortable reality of how do we somehow align with racism. It's worse than it's ever been, in my opinion. All the things you're afraid of, they're coming. Because we are not willing to give up a few of our marbles. We want all of it. So we enjoy a little season where we get all of it, and then another season where we get it all taken away. And the only way that we have any comfort, here's what I do want you to do something. Go back and read the entirety of the New Testament, or at least the Gospels. And when you see the word Rome, replace it with the United States, because that's where we are. Now, it's not pejorative against the United States. It's the United States is so big, so powerful, so much that Jesus didn't even concern himself over it. What he said was, well, give to Rome what's Rome. Give to Caesar what's Caesar's. Give to the president what the president's. We can't do anything about it. Except that we can recognize that there is another kingdom. And Satan doesn't care anything about the United States, in spite of what we might think. Satan cares everything about the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of Jesus. And he wants to see that destroyed. And the best way that he can get that destroyed is if he can get people to believe there's a kingdom that is equal or greater than the actual kingdom. The best way for Satan to destroy the kingdom of Jesus is to get people to think that the kingdom of the United States and the kingdom of Jesus are the same thing, and they are not. The kingdom of the United States is just another kingdom with good people in it and bad people in it. Good leaders and bad leaders. Honest leaders and dishonest leaders. And they are all governed by Satan. They all are. That's why Jesus called him the prince of this world. They're all vulnerable. I don't know that I would want to go into politics, because I would become more vulnerable to attack from Satan than probably ever in my life. Because what did we just read? Principalities, powers, things that are so far above what you and I will ever know. So really the only thing that we can do, this is the only thing that we can do. And the reason I want you to read through the Testaments, the New Testament again, or the Gospels, and replace that word with America, is because people need each other now more than they ever have. Someone who sees things politically differently than you is not your enemy. It's not the other. It's just someone trying to make sense of this mess, just like you're trying to make sense of it. So the first church, the early church, came together because they had to, because they were persecuted by Rome. Rome was too big, couldn't possibly do anything with Rome. If this was the world that was part of that time, now the Rome hadn't been around, but if this is the time of Jesus, Rome is this big and bigger. This would just be a tiny, tiny little province. And I think that's why Americans have such a difficult time understanding the gospel, is because we've never been a marginalized people, ever. So we read these stories, and we try to envision what it would be like to be marginalized, but we never have been. Not the way these people were. So, we put on the full armor of God. We recognize that all of it is part of the mechanisms of Satan. Every power structure that has ever existed on planet Earth will always be a mechanism of Satan. Doesn't mean that everybody is satanic, but it means that that's what he does. He manipulates the powers of this world. And we can't really do anything about that. But we can love one another. I think that we can vote for people who are peacemakers. I do. I don't know if we will or not, but I think we can. Paul goes on to describe what the full armor of God is, and if you grew up in church, you know this. And I'm going to have the music team come up, put on the full armor of God so you can stand against the evil days that are coming. You may be able to stand your ground, right? It's kind of hard to stand your ground when you're buck naked, so put on some armor. Stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness, with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes with the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation, sword of the Spirit. That's the word of God. Be sure you check your Facebook status morning and night. Pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people, even those ones you disagree with, for all of them. Because we're in a mess. We're in a mess that I think is much, much deeper than probably we think that we are. And our little church can do what our little church can do. We can love one another. We can pray. We can encourage one another to good works. We can look at all that and go, I don't know about this, but there's people that need cared for right here. There's people that are hungry. People need some help. Some little foster kids that need cared for. There's people that are suffering. We can do that, right? And we can pray. We can pray and pray and pray, which is really what worship is about.